in this video, I'm going to be showing you the 3 things you need to focus on to improve in ranked at the fastest rate possible. Now note, this video is going to be very in-depth, so make sure you stick around to the end of the video. So I get the question a lot of the times, when I'm VOD reviewing my own gameplay, how do I know what to look for? So the first thing and the most popular thing people look for on how to improve is mechanics. If you go ahead on YouTube, there are a bunch of videos saying, how do I make my aim better? And in this video, I'm going to go ahead and show you 3 things on how to really focus on making your mechanics better. So the thing with mechanics, it's not just aim, it's your movement, when you're like deciding to spray, when you're deciding to go ahead and tap fire, when you're deciding like to peek a certain way. That's all general mechanics, and it's very important to go ahead and kind of hit on multiple parts of this. So don't just go into aim labs and then just hit a whole bunch of targets and think like, yep, I'm betting better at Valorant. That's irrelevant. It's not going to make you better. So you really want to focus on the core mechanics and gunplay that Valorant has. And what I mean by that is, like, for instance, spray control, right? A lot of people don't know that, hey, there is a certain way that the gun sprays in terms of like a Phantom or a Vandal. They're very similar, and they don't know how to really control their spray. So the best way I can explain it, I made a Valorant short on this, but for those of you who have not watched it, basically whenever you shoot a Phantom, it goes up to the left and makes the number 7, and then after a while it crosses back to the right and like cross over and make a T, right? So the best way to do it is, instead of just letting it spray like this, you want to go ahead and pull down to the left, snap back to the left, smack back to the right, right? And you want to kind of make sure all the bullets as close to center mass as possible. So that's the first thing. If you feel like you didn't know how to do that, or you didn't really know how to control your spray, this is the first step to go ahead and go to the practice range and actionably improve your gameplay by just literally going into a custom game and shooting at a wall, right? So that's the first thing you can do. The other thing is really like movement. A lot of like lesser experienced players don't understand how movement works. They kind of just go ahead and either full commit crouch spray all the time, right? And I'm sure many of you have died to yourself crouching. And why this is bad at lower ratings is because crosshair placement is a big issue, and if you're crouching all the time, people generally don't have their crosshair placement at headshot level, so you're kind of killing yourself, right? And then the other thing is like understanding how to counter stray. For instance, when you're going in one direction, so let's say I'm going to the left right now, as soon as I change my movement and go to the right, you'll see that my bullet was accurate, right? It was accurate, the recoil is perfect, like it's right on the crosshair. It's very accurate, and that's really how you want to go ahead and take most of your gunfights. Is you want to go ahead and have like, oops, I accidentally messed up there, but you want to have like good like counter strafing mechanics. You will mess up here like I am right now, but that's just part of the game, and that's how you want to go ahead and practice, okay? So the other thing I really want to talk about is peeking. Peeking is really important because a lot of the time people either just slow peek around corners, which is horrible. Like, think about this corner, for example. Like, when you're here, and if you're slow peeking this corner on ascent ever, if the other person is here, you see how you can only see the wall right now? They will see your entire shoulder right now if they're right here, right? So that's why it's very important to understand angles and knowing like how to peek appropriately, right? So for example, don't just be one or the other extreme. Don't slow peek, and don't just super wide swing all the time either, but understand when and where you need to do these things. So like for instance here, I'd probably want a wide swing here because I want to either be held from here, right? Or maybe even whine. So it's very important that I want to go ahead and wide swing this angle so that I'm not just like giving them a free kill and essentially and like not being able to see them and they can see me first. So right, so peeking is really a very important thing to focus on. And then the other thing is, like, let's say you're playing slow and you're defaulting and you're like trying to you have control of A main and you're looking for kills to see if anyone's peeking. You don't want to just full on peek like this and expose yourself to like every angle in the game, right? Because they could be hell, they could be dice, they could be right side heaven, they could be left side heaven, they can be Chen, right? You want to go ahead and try and clear one angle at a time, right? You want to kind of do this. That way you're kind of like just clearing everything, and then you can kind of dictate your next move based on what information you're gathering this way, right? So for example, most people are not just holding like the wall right now. They're kind of like holding a little bit wider, right? So this can really be beneficial in case someone has like an aggressive position, or they're just holding you since you do have Peeker's advantage. And for those of you who don't know what Peeker's advantage is, it's basically whoever's swinging in this game first will have like the advantage. Okay, so the other thing I really want to focus on is going ahead. I talked about it earlier, but it's crouch spraying. This is one that people are doing too much and they're just committing to sprays the entire time. Know when to crouch. Crouching is not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. It's good to control your spray. It's good to go ahead and like hard commit to fights, but know when to do it. It's not an all the time thing. because you're committing, you're standing your ground and you're dying on that hill essentially, right? So if you're gonna go ahead and do it, make sure you look at your VODs and see, hey, I shouldn't have done that here. I could have lived here if I didn't crouch strafe and I just normally shot, counter strafe instead, and then analyze that. So the last tip I'm going to say for aim training and all of that, aim training is good, but make sure you go into deathmatch in the Valorant client and actually get a feel for the actual gunplay in Valorant to go ahead and aim train that way and quickly warm up aim that way in Valorant. So let's go ahead and talk about the second thing that I think you need to focus on to improve at the fastest rate possible. So the second thing I want you to go ahead and focus on, and this is something that I think is the most important, is game sense. And what I mean by that is not just like, hey, this is a bad decision here, oh, I shouldn't have peeked here and I died. It's more understanding when you should have made a significant change to your gameplay. And what I mean by that is, this is the most common example I'm going to use because it happens at the highest of ratings, but let's say you're on an eco round, right? You're saving for the next round, and you're going to go ahead and default on the save round on defense, right? Let's say you have 2 people in A, one person in mid, 2 people on B, just like a standard default defense setup here on Ascent, right? That's horrible. You are just going to lose a round. You're not going to get anything out of it. It might be a flawless round. You're giving them free ult orbs by getting, free kills basically on each site if they decide to go ahead and 5-man on that round. That is horrible. So let's say you're just on autopilot and you're doing nothing on an eco round. That's a good place to start. So for example, let me give you a specific scenario where this can kind of make sense to you. Let's say you have a chamber with an op with his ultimate, right? And everyone's saving, but he has his chamber ult. That is your win condition for the round. So let's say 4 people stack on this A site. What's the worst thing that can happen? These 4 people might kill 2 people, and the chamber has to go ahead and retake from B with his chamber op, and then it's kind of like a winnable scenario. Or they see 4 people there and you're stacked there, so they rotate into the chamber op, which is still a win-win scenario, right? So that's kind of like an actionable thing that you might see in your games at the current time of this recording, since chamber is still used a lot. But that's not the only thing I'm talking about when it comes to decision making and game sense, rather. It's also knowing when to go ahead and kind of rotate and also push on defense. So let's say they're always 5-manning, which is super common in Valorant. People just like to 5-man on attack, right? And they just kind of want to go, oh, let's go A this round, let's go B this round, right? What that means is basically if they ever get stalled out here, right, and the defenders use their utility correctly, this is really bad as an attacker, because that means you gave up the rest of the map control, and they could be in mid, they could be in your spawn, they could be tucked in here in Sub Rosa, and they have all the information because they can hear the sound of you leaving, you rotating. Not only that, but let's say you're coming back from spawn, you're like, oh, there's so many people here, let's go ahead and rotate. The reason there's so many people there is because they have someone pushed up, right? So like whenever I'm rotating back, I'm like, oh, there were 4 people here. Trust me, there's someone gonna be pushed up, because they have that information. That's why they're stacked on that site. So this is something you have to consider. And even on your defense, you should also think about when to push and why to push, right? Because pushing on defense is something that's, it's so bad when I hear this, right? I always hear, why are you pushing on defense, when I'm like looking at a low rated game and I hear that statement, I'm like, oh my god, man. You can't be serious. Like, that is a part of the game, because if you find holes in the attack, this position here can win you an entire round, right? So this is one of those things you need to focus on. And I have a video called Why You Suck at Defending in Valorant, and you should check that out, because trust me, it's going to increase your game sense significantly. So let's go ahead and talk about the third thing you need to go ahead and focus on. The final thing I want you to go ahead and focus on is knowing when to take risks, trading, adapting, and being confident in your gameplay. And what I mean by that is, if you look at pro VODs or just high rated player and Twitch streamers, let's say, you'll notice that, for instance, sometimes they'll just go ahead, they'll walk out mid with like the slight information that they'll have, and it's not necessarily a bad play, because sometimes they make a really good play and it catches people off guard, but there's this sense of risk assessment. They are taking the risk because there could be a payout, and it could also make them look bad because it might just go ahead and feed, but at the same time they're being unpredictable, but they're being confident. So sometimes you'll see on the flip side, people will say, the Twitch chat, right, will be like, oh my god, ego peak, lol, why you peeking, blah blah, all this nonsense, right? But a lot of the time it does work, and you'll never really see praise for that. And I want you to realize, like, there has to be, like, there will always be risks, but if you never take them, you're kind of just being what I call a passenger player, right? So a passenger player is someone who just goes ahead and is along for the ride and they're getting carried. You don't want to be a passenger player sometimes. Now, why I said sometimes is because let's say your team is doing amazing. Oh, be a passenger player all you want. You're probably going to win the game as long as you know that's your role in that game. And that's what I mean by adapting, because sometimes you can be the passenger player, but sometimes, let's say your team is full autopilot, you need to go ahead and try and, let's say, take the charge, try to maybe IGL, make some calls, or make some aggressive, proactive plays to go ahead and try and sneak some round wins from your impact alone. So it's really like understanding your role in a game, how the enemy is playing, being able to read them, and really adapting your playstyle to really get the optimal result for the game. And those are the 3 things you need to focus on to improve at the fastest rate possible in Valorant. So make sure that you go ahead and share this video with your friends, and make sure to go ahead and like and comment for the YouTube algorithm. Subscribe to the channel. We're almost at 600 subs. I'll see you in the next video.